Hello, back for more ships, pairings, dynamics, all that good thing. Just want to make sure I preface again that this is not just ships. This is there's any sort of dynamic pairing relationship, whether it's romantic or not. If it's romantic, it's part of what I will find quality of them, and if it's not, then it's not, and that's fine. It's just how they are as a pair or in a relationship. But there's shipping in there as well, obviously. And we're here for part two of this, since there's obviously a lot of them. In my United shirt, because it's the final tonight, and yeah, I mean, by the time the video gets uploaded, the result will have happened. So fuck you, Finn, for commenting if Spurs won, and fuck you, Finn, for commenting if United win. Well, you probably won't comment if United win, but fuck you regardless, Finn. But no, we're here for having MyGO ships, characters, relationships, dynamics, all that good stuff, tier list. And let's just get straight into it. We start with Soyo and Mortis. I mean, yeah, both of these are in. I think Soyo Mutsumi a little bit better than Mortis, but they're both, yeah, they're like, in terms of their dynamic, incredible. And then like I mentioned before, I've mentioned this before, but I actually ended up fucking predicting something in this show for once, was Mortis and Soyo's dynamic, and Soyo kind of taking up that motherly role with Mortis, in given how she didn't have that kind of loving family in her life. Soyo's kind of taken on that role, and we've seen Soyo take on that role in MyGO as a band as well, so it only makes sense for it to happen with Mortis too. And what I think is really interesting with Soyo and Mortis, and Mutsumi in particular, is that there's a bit of like repentance on Soyo's side, in that she feels like, for the way she treated Mutsumi obviously throughout MyGO, and through all the way she kind of manipulated her and gaslit her, and throughout the whole kind of that whole drama of trying to get Kreisky back together, she feels bad for that, and she feels like she's kind of repenting for her sins here by taking care of Mortis, taking care of another person within Mutsumi, and by extension helping Mutsumi. It's interesting though, because a lot of the dynamic, I mean, for the most part of Mujica, we get Soyo and Mortis rather than Soyo and Mutsumi. There's very few Soyo and Mutsumi scenes, because a lot of the time when they interact, Mutsumi is dormant and Mortis is at the front. But the last scene we do get of them two together is very nice. In the school, Soyo asks about the new things that Mutsumi is planting, and there's in a much better spot now that Soyo hasn't got any ulterior motives when it comes to interacting with Mutsumi. Mutsumi, obviously, I think just Mutsumi and her whole DID in that situation now, just being kind of out there in the open with the band members, it must be relieving for her. It must be so, like, a huge weight off her shoulders. I mean, not that it was something that was weighing down on her before, because it wasn't as present. It only sort of kind of emerged and came to light because of what happened in Mujica. But still, it explains a lot of why Mutsumi is the way she is. It means the characters can approach her with that in mind as well. And Soyo and Mutsumi's dynamic, going from this really toxic kind of back and forth in MyGO, and a much more one-sided dynamic with Soyo and Mutsumi, to Soyo really caring for Mortis more than anyone else in the show, seeing Mortis as a human, seeing Mortis for who she is, more than anyone else in the show. It just highlights Soyo's kindness, just an inherent kindness that no other character, apart from maybe Anon, has in the show. And yeah, they're great, both Mutsumi, Soyo, and Soyo Mortis. I think that's a fine spot for them in around Saki and Mutsumi Mortis. But yeah, I really love them. They were one of the highlights of Mujica, those two. And I couldn't think of a better kind of direction to take their dynamic. I'm looking forward to more Soyo and Mortis stuff in the future that isn't maybe as grounded in the drama, I guess. And I'm looking forward to more Soyo and Mutsumi stuff in the future that is just them being nice and normal to each other. Not to say that Mutsumi was unkind to Soyo, but you know what I mean. And then we have Soyo and Yamu, which again, it exists, I guess. It's I mean, does it exist? I don't think they've even interacted once in the show. No, they have no interactions whatsoever, and in terms of like thematic stuff, and there isn't really much that's kind of coming to mind right now regarding those two. I suppose they're kind of there's something that could be said about the way they view their like main band member, obviously Soyo with Tomori and Nyamu with Sakiko. There's definitely something there that could be spoken about, but for now there isn't really much there. I guess I'll put them there for now. Again, a lot of these interactions between the MyGO members and the Mujica members that are just like non-existent. I'm hoping we do get more in the future. It would be nice. And now we're on to Soyo and Saki. Yeah. Wow. It's amazing because there isn't really a whole lot of spoken stuff in their dynamic in terms of their interactions. Obviously, you get the episode 8, and MyGO, that whole debacle, and then you have the whole episode like 7, and 7 of Mujica and them two, and Soyo bringing Saki back. But apart from that, like in between, there isn't really much of that goes on interactions wise between them. But my god, there's just so much there in terms of the way they view each other, in terms of their feelings towards Kryshik. And I think what I like the most is how there's their respect for each other. We see in the manga, the Soyo manga, that like she really does hold Saki at a very high esteem, and we see it in the anime as well, especially in MyGO. As does like all the characters, they hold Saki to this ridiculous kind of high standard. But what was interesting was we saw it reciprocated with Saki in episode 1 of Mujica. We see how highly she thinks of Soyo, and man, it's a dynamic I really can't put into words very well how good it is, because it's just something that feels right. It just feels good. And their card story, their new card story, like them meeting up, Soyo inviting Saki to go to a MyGO live, Saki just not being able to because it's not something that she can confront and face in this current state of the band that Mujica is in. But Soyo is still going to be there for her regardless, kind of someone that she can almost fall back on and really trust, and not have to play this act of God around, which is what Saki needs. And Soyo, as I mentioned with Mutsumi Mortis, is inherently a very kind person. I mean, we see how she switches up the moment she realizes Sakiko's situation. She instantly realizes the brevity, the depth, the seriousness of the situation, and then she just goes straight after Sakiko because she realizes Sakiko's in a rut right now, and nothing is going to bring her out apart from force, apart from actually going there and talking to her. So she does that, and she physically drags her away, which is exactly what Sakiko needed in that. Like, sometimes that is just what you have to do. And, I mean, it essentially saved Sakiko. Soyo did. While Sakiko might have saved Soyo before with Kryshik, made her feel human in that, for once in her life, gave her something to treasure before tearing it all away and tearing it all down and walking away from it all. And understandably, Soyo would have resented Saki for that. And those feelings, they were there for a long time from Soyo's side. But it isn't quite resentment. It's not completely resentment at all. There's always been this underlying respect and value that Soyo holds towards Saki that is different from a lot of the other characters. Is similar kind of high value and high standards. There's something, I don't know, I don't know how to explain it, but there's depth to it. If that makes any sense. It might not make any sense, but if it does, it does. And having Soyo be able to act on those feelings and act on how much she cares for Saki in Mujica is amazing to see. I mean, again, it's just Soyo's inherent kindness coming into play, and it's not something that is surprising or new when it comes to Soyo. It's just something that is actually now coming to the surface, given she hasn't got all this emotional baggage, all this ulterior motives, and just she can just be herself more, basically. And herself is a genuinely very kind person who cares deeply about a lot of people, and Saki is one of those people who is at the top of that list. I mean, the fact that she'd even go out of her way to talk to her after all this, after Sakiko's kind of made the declaration that they're going to walk their own path alongside MyGO, but never meeting. Soyo's like, I don't have any intention of letting you go still. I might have let you go in Kryshik. I might have gone to my lowest trying to get you back, but I'm still not letting you go. And I think that's just really beautiful from Soyo, because like I said, it's just someone there who will always be there for Saki if she needs it, and doesn't have to have that different kind of act around that is required of Sakiko in Mujica. But yeah, Soyo Saki are just like wow, man, like wow. And again, it's a relationship I can't put into words very well yet. I've just spoke for a decent amount of time about it. That means I'm recording, actually. That would be bad. Yeah, I am. But yeah, Soyo Saki up there at the top for now, because wow. Good God, what a pairing. I mean, ship-wise too, there's potential there romantically, given just how deeply they care for each other. But yeah, amazing dynamic. And now we have Soyo and Taki. A very nice dynamic, a very nice relationship those two have. I think it would go at the top of A. To me, they're the two members of MyGO who are the most mature, the most emotionally stable, which is still not the high standard. The standards there aren't particularly high, but they're really the glue that keeps the band together. I think Soyo in a more kind of motherly and emotional, caring kind of way, Taki in a more logistical, pragmatic kind of way, and essentially they're like the mum and dad of the band. They're the parental figures of the band that the rest of the girls will go to, and they kind of have this great unspoken relationship. I mean, we see it in episode 11 of MyGO, where Taki Taki apologised to Soyo because Taki saw through her whole thing. Obviously she did. She saw through Soyo's whole deal throughout MyGO, and it's just the kind of thing where they're both like, yeah, we both can't forget about Kryshik, really, but but we're both doing this band properly. We're both gonna give it our all, and they know they can lean on each other, they can rely on each other in that regard. And in any regard, when it comes to taking care of the girls around them, taking care of each other, for me it is a very big unspoken kind of relationship between them, which is just very pleasant to see, because there's also that kind of banter and the way they bicker, and the way they do come together to hate on Anon is very funny. But there's a lot there between them. They're like, obviously they were two members affected by Kreisek, but they haven't got quite the same, I don't know how to put it, it's not quite the same as someone like Tomori, Mutsumi or Takiko in terms of their connection to Kreisek. It feels different to me. I can't quite put it into words, but there's a different kind of essence to how they felt towards it, and I think they can reside within each other and sort of be there for each other without having to communicate that, which is great. And I think that's a really cool and interesting relationship that they have in that regard. Then we have Soyo and Wika. Obviously, in terms of interactions, none, maybe. I can't think of one right now off the top of my head. No, I'm pretty sure they have no interactions, Soyo and Wika. Again, something that I'd love to see more of in the future. But thematically, in terms of the parallels, in terms of the visual language in the show, there's so much similarities. Them two, again, because there's nothing there for me to kind of refer to in terms of interactions, but we both see them cling so unsightly onto a previous band. We see them obsess. I mean, essentially they both kind of have that, they both have definitely a level of bipolar disorder, both of them, and it's evident. For me, Wika is sort of like a more extreme version of Soyo in some ways. Obviously, because of Wika's past, there's so much there, there's so much that kind of gave birth there because of that, but the parallels between them and the way they clung on so tightly, the way they were portrayed as so pathetically in episodes obviously 8 and 9, 10, 11 respectively for Wika. There's so much there, and again, I can't find the words to describe them, but a lot of it is shown visually through the show. Again, with body language, there's a lot of focus on Wika's body language and facial expressions, the same with Soyo. I think the difference between the two of them is that in MyGO, Soyo is very in your face about everything, in terms of the kind of what's it called? Her expressions, the foreshadowing, the visual, everything like that. It's more in your face for Soyo in MyGO, and she's very much present in the storyline. Like, her presence is felt in the storyline, whereas Wika doesn't have that. And Wika is much more subtle in her madness, I guess. In her madness, essentially, it's much less in your face as Soyo is, and there's an interesting kind of contrast there. But fundamentally, what kind of makes the two of them so similar is their need and their feelings and their desires to feel human. We see it in the Soyo manga about Soyo in terms of just not being able to fit in, not finding something that she can really truly resonate with and attach herself to. She just doesn't have anything like that at all. And Wika's essentially this. I mean, we see it all with Wika. We get all Wika's backstory completely exposited towards us, and it's very clear that she has this just complete detachment from life and anything like that. Her only attachment is obviously towards Sakiko and Mujica. And we see in the lyrics as well, we see in the intermissions as well, Wika's feeling of wanting to be human, wanting to be seen as a human, wanting to not be seen as a monster. And that parallels with Soyo's feelings as well. And again, in terms of their like ugliness and their sort of more extreme traits and actions, they're both characters that are taken to the highest in that regard. I mean, MyGO, episode 8, that ending scene, that is an episode 7. Soyo, episode 7 till 10 is some of the like lowest points in the series, and in terms of how pathetic she falls, how cruel she can be. Wika in episode 9 to episode 12 is also some of the. I use the word ugly again, but ugly feels like a very harsh word. I don't obviously mean that literally. It's more like what's on the inside and those kind of darker feelings that they both possess that aren't as accepted in society, are more looked down upon in general, and they both have those. But like I said, there's literally no interactions between them as actual characters in the show, but there's so much to unpack in terms of paralleling each other within the two bands and within their storylines. Amazing characters, amazing. They're two of my favourites, so naturally there's just going to be things I pick up on between those two, more than maybe the others. Then we have Soyo and Umiri, who, I guess there's just not really anything going on. They're both bassists, I guess. They're both mentally unwell bassists. I'm trying to think thematically wise if there's much to really think about. The fact that Umiri was Soyo's replacement, maybe there's something there to think about. In obviously MyGO episode 9, I can't really think of much thematically wise in terms of personality wise that is not anything that's jumping out to me, but I think there could be something there. I don't know why Wika and Vrana are that high, because they're just, I guess there is some kind of a dichotomy between those two that could be interesting. But anyway, that's the thing, is that all these characters, every single one of them, every single dynamic, there is something there that I could talk about or analyze or kind of dive into. But as of now, as I'm just reading this off the cuff, as I'm just saying this off the cuff, like there's just nothing jumping out to me immediately. But if I did take some time to look at any two characters, I'm sure there's definitely something I could find between them. Again, Taki and Mortis. There's just nothing going on there. But Taki and Mutsumi, on the other hand, there's potential between them, and I think I'll put them there. There's definitely potential between them. Obviously both project members, and we see, I think what the most interesting part is that Taki has a lot of empathy for Mutsumi in episode 2 of Mujica. How she understands Mutsumi for obviously being in the shadow of her parents, being in the limelight. There's something similar to Taki that goes through being in the shadow of her sister. There's definitely a lot of potential there. I don't think it's as much as in depth for something like Soyo and Wika, where the parallels are more pronounced and obvious. They're more intentional. But Taki and Mutsumi, there's room for development from those two side by side, and I'd love to see more interactions between them, because there's just very few, despite them both being Kreisig members. So yeah, I think that they deserve to go up there actually. Taki and Yamu, both drummers, haven't interacted, I don't think. I don't think there's really anything to say about those two. I think. I'm not too sure. Yeah, I don't think there's anything really between those two at all. So I'll probably put them low, because even then there isn't. I'll just put them there. Not that the order in this section really matters, but yeah, I'll just do that. Taki and Saki, very interesting dynamic, those two. Again, we don't really get much or any of Taki's feelings about Kreischick until episode 7 of Mujica, but we do get her feelings towards Sakiko. Obviously, it's a huge part of her character is her inferiority complex towards her sister and Sakiko. And I mean, when she first meets Sakiko for the first time after all of this happens in Mujica, and she's just unable to really communicate what she wants of her, as it is with Taki, is that she's always so close to making those developments, so close to taking that extra step, and she never actually does. But it's still interesting regardless. But especially from Taki's side towards Saki, there's more going on there. I think there is good, because for me there's a lot going on, like I said, from Taki's perspective towards Saki, but from Saki towards Taki there's not as much, I don't think. I feel like, again, Saki saw Taki as a very dependable person, and wasn't really aware of Taki's situation regarding her sister, regarding those feelings that she has towards her sister. I mean, she finds out in episode 7 of Mujica. You see a kind of a surprised face she has, and again, those two, there's a lot of potential for them two that I'd love to just see more, because they're two characters that aren't weighed down as much by their own relationship. I think with obviously Saki and Tomori, Saki and Mutsumi, Saki and Soyo, there's a lot going on between them, but there's just not as much between Taki and Saki that I think could get in the way of their relationship, especially from Saki's perspective, which is why I'd love to see some interactions between them now, given their positions, they're essentially leaders of both the bands, so I'm sure there's a lot of stuff they could discuss, talk about, kind of resonate with each other with, but empathise with each other with. But yeah, as for now, there's not too much. But still, I put them in high A, because there is interesting stuff between them. There's a lot of potential as well between them. Now, Taki and Wika, again, characters that just haven't interacted in the story at all, I don't think. But there's a lot of parallels between them that are really hard to pick up on, and you really won't notice them until you dive very deep into their characters. I mean, it's something that Sign pointed out, that one of the main translators of the series, they did a whole kind of thing on. I link it in my Taki video, about their feelings towards Tomori and Sakiko respectively, their feelings of obviously wanting to be human, because that's something that all of the Kreischick members felt at some point, given Tomori's song. They all resonate with that in some way, and the way they hold Tomori and Sakiko respectively in such high regards, which causes problems for their relationships respectively. It's really interesting. Those two, again, I don't think there's much that I could see them having interaction wise, in terms of them actually talking to each other. I can't picture either of them really opening up about anything towards each other. They both have kind of a very hard outer shell to break, and I mean with each other they're just not really going to breach that. but the story and the themes have a lot to say about them, and there's a lot there that again will go over your head if you don't think about it. Whereas I haven't really talked much about these character ships recently. I mean, Taki Saki, there isn't really, if I'm not talking about the characters romantically, there probably just isn't anything there for me to say about them romantically. But yeah, Taki Rika, very cool, very underrated kind of dynamic that they have. A very interesting relationship that is obviously not present at all in the story, but you can still find a lot there to talk about and think about. And then we have Taki and Umiri. Taki and Umiri, wow. I mentioned this in the previous video, I mentioned this several times, it's just how genuine their relationship feels, how real their banter is, how just snappy and like very dynamic their conversations are. It all just feels very scarily natural. Again, these are two characters I ship. I love their relationship together. Obviously, there's certain obstacles in the way for both sides for shipping, but it's just interesting that we know nothing about how they came to be friends at all, because I just cannot picture for the life of me either of them two making that first step or making subsequent steps with each other to get to know each other in a more friendly way. I can't picture it at all. That's why it's something that must have just happened kind of naturally over the course as time went on. Obviously, with them sitting close to each other, they're just going to have this there just are going to be more times where they end up interacting with each other. But it's fascinating that we don't know anything about their meeting and how they came to be, especially compared to a lot of the rest of the cast that we do know how they ended up being friends. I mean, I'm trying to think of anyone that have an established relationship that we don't see them meet for the first time. Obviously, Mutsumi and Sakiko, but we still know why and how they became friends, because they're childhood friends with their families, two very prominent families. I mean, I'd love to know more there, but with Taki and Umiri, there's just nothing between them in their past, which is fascinating. And yet there's so much between them now. They're one of the most genuine relationships in the whole series. They're one of the most kind of beloved relationships in the whole series, for having so few interactions together. And one of my favourite moments with them is how they, over the course of the series, they try and kind of breach each other's wall, and they don't really get much progress. And then all of a sudden, Taki mentions the untrustworthy line to Umiri, and all of a sudden Umiri's whole world just almost comes down. She's like, oh my god, what do you mean? And then Umiri learns more about what she meant, what being trustworthy means. And then one of my favourite scenes, it's a really short scene, it's in episode 9, I think. It's after episode 10. It's in episode 10 is when they take Mortis home after she kind of breaks down, and Umiri's like, no, I got to stay here to be trustworthy, and Taki then drags her away. And the next day in school, Umiri's like, all we did was look over at Mortis, nothing happened. And Taki's just like, yeah, that's just how it is. That's just what it means to be close to someone and care about them. It's just those kind of unspoken actions. It's not about being so explicit in your trust and your feelings towards other people. Those actions speak louder than words, and I really adore that scene, that tiny scene between them, because it's just such a beautiful way from Taki's side to and I don't know. I really can't explain why I love that scene so much. But again, their ship, the dynamic, amazing, awesome, one of the best in the series. I really hope we get more between them. I mean, any sort of interaction between them is always welcome, is always pleasant, always funny. But yeah, I love them a lot. Next we have Tomori and Mortis. Again, there's like not really any interactions between them, I think. I mean, apart from... no, there's just really very little between them. They're, for me, a relationship I'd love to see more of, because I feel like they would get along. I feel like they'd have this kind of... they'd be very easy to get along with each other. I think I'll just put them there for now, because there's a lot of potential between them. Yeah, that's about it about them. I'm sure there's a lot more I could probably talk about with Tomori and Mortis, given how central they are to the story, and how kind of the like, I don't know, just how prominent their roles are in the story. But for now, there's not much coming to mind. Tomori Mutsumi is in a kind of similar boat where I feel like they have a lot of potential for interactions in the future, but they do have more there, just given their Kreischick connection. And that whole scene in episode 9 where Mutsumi goes to the bridge where they used to wait for Tomori, and Tomori goes down and just says, "Let's go see the stars together." It's just such like an autism to autism communication between them, and it's just super nice. They have a very pleasant relationship, those two, and I would have loved to have seen more of it in like Kreischick, just those two little guys just in their own world. But again, yeah, I'm not really expecting much between them, given how, I don't know, given their ways of communication don't really align, I suppose. I think that what is interesting is how Mutsumi is how highly she thinks of Tomori's singing and her emotion in her voice, and she's able to really express how she feels. I think that's something that Mutsumi probably envies of Tomori a little. But again, there's not too much in the text that really says a lot about them. And we have Tomori Nyamu. I mean, when I put them side by side at this, a lot of people used to say that they look similar. And when I put them side by side at this, they just don't really, with these models in particular. But obviously Tomori's hair color changes by the day, so but again, I don't think there's anything really to say between them. I do think that theory about them looking similar and Sakiko choosing Yamu because of those similarities and calling her Amoris about love is interesting, but it doesn't really go beyond just kind of a theory for now. I guess I'll just put them there. So we have some huge dynamics coming up here now. Some really big hitters. So first of all, I mean, Tomori and Sakiko. What can I say? What can I even say about Tomasaki that hasn't been said before, that hasn't been absolutely dug into the ground by the story itself? I mean, they're the heartbeat of the show. They're nothing even... I don't know. I actually don't know what to even say or like where to even begin with like Tomasaki. And you know what? I'm not even gonna try kind of get all eloquent and elegant about their relationship and their dynamic because there's just so much going on in my head when it comes to them, and the show does an incredible job by itself to get across their relationship, and all a large majority of MyGo songs, a decent amount of other Mujica songs. You'll be hard to find a MyGo song that doesn't reference Sakiko in some way. I mean, the whole joint live we had recently centered around them essentially, and I don't know, guys. I can't. I'm just gonna have to leave them there and say no more because right now my head is too frazzled to even come up with the words to describe how much I love the relationship and what makes the relationship so great. If you know, you know about Tomasaki. That's like all it is. If you're in with Tomasaki, you're in, and if you're not, this is the wrong place. And I don't wanna get too mean, but if you don't fuck with Tomasaki, you don't really get the show quite like the people that do. So I'm sorry, but that's just how it is. They're at the top. They're going to be there. That is the best dynamic relationship in the show. And let's move on to a dynamic that isn't far behind them. Tomo Soyo. God, I mean, I'm looking at the list now, and Soyo really does have some really high up dynamics with the characters. I think I'd probably put Soyo Saki a little bit lower, probably there. Or there, actually. But yeah, Soyo Tomo. The way Soyo cares about Tomori, the way she wanted to reject Tomori's emotions and what she sung about that ended up piercing Soyo's heart, which isn't what Soyo wanted. She didn't want someone to really understand her as well as Tomori did, unintentionally as well. Tomori is just expressing how she feels about the world, and in doing so ended up dragging Soyo into that without realizing. And for Soyo, it was, to start with, she felt recognized for the first time ever with those lyrics. And it was scary. It almost be scary for Soyo to read such heartfelt and such genuine lyrics that say exactly how she feels, exactly how she feels, but refuses to put them out into the open like Tomori did. And it's Tomori's absolute earnest nature and genuine nature versus Soyo's facade she puts up, this face, this mask, this inhuman side compared to Tomori's absolute grounded human side. I mean, that in MyGo especially is just super prominent, and now they've taken up this just a beautiful relationship in episode, I think it's 13 on the bridge in MyGo. That conversation is one of my favourites one of my favourite scenes ever, like just, not in just the series, just ever. That is one of my favourite scenes. Even though I know it is just Soyo kind of just spelling out how she feels in their relationship, it just must feel so good for Soyo to get that off her chest. and speak to Tomori genuinely. The way Tomori wouldn't let go of Soyo, even after everything that Soyo did to her. Oh man, it really is. It's just a beautiful, beautiful relationship. Possibly top 3. Possibly top 3. But they, oh man, like, there's just so much between them. There's just so much between them that's so beautiful and just really. I mean, just whenever I think of them, I just get emotional, and it's just too much for me to think about and handle. So let's just move on to the next one, which is Tomori Taki. Another relationship that is just wow. And I speak about, if you want to hear more of my thoughts about Tomori and Taki and more on the flawed aspect of their relationship there, but also the how it isn't this one-sided dynamic that a lot of people think it is, you can go watch my video on Taki about Taki. I speak about, obviously I can't speak about Taki or talk about Tomori, so they are a big part of that video. And yeah, I love them, and I think, oh, it's tough. I think I'll put them there, but they were probably the first kind of relationship and dynamic that I kind of attached myself onto in the show. Very early on, I enjoyed their almost the comedic side about it. Taki kind of being a bit of like a tsundere for her, and then but as I rewatched the show, as I kind of, my understanding of the show and the characters deepened and I got into it as far as I did, I learned so much about their relationship and so much how there's just so much more than meets the eye to them, and it's not this kind of cutesy relationship that a lot of people might think it is, and but at the same time it's not completely toxic either. There's a lot of encouragement and love and genuineness from each side that is reciprocated. But obviously with Tomori, the way she expresses these feelings, the way she can't do that kind of thing with people as often. She doesn't have the ability to express those feelings as consistently and as clearly as it's through song. So there's only going to be so much from Tomori's side, but it's never as if Tomori is actively kind of pushing Taki away or is toxic towards her, despite Taki's treatment of Tomori at times. Tomori just incessantly will accept Taki and keep her by her side, and that's all she wants, that's all she needs, and that's all that Taki wants, even though maybe Taki does want more, but she's very happy where she is now by her side. But it like, again, like as I speak about the good things, I always have to come back to the bad things, but as I speak about the bad things, I always have to come back to the good things, because there's an important balance between the two of them in their relationship. And yeah, again, this relationship I absolutely ship. I mean, I should have mentioned it with Tomori Saki, obviously I ship. They're end game, but they're not end game, because given the nature of the two bands, the way their direction they're heading, it's not going to happen. So they're like in a celestial plane above everyone else in a relationship, but when they're back down to earth, things are very different. If that makes any sense, it probably doesn't, but you know, basically they're on a higher tier to everyone else, a higher plane of existence, but once you ground them and they're on the same level as everyone else, then things get a bit different. But yeah, Taki Tomo, amazing, awesome, incredible relationship, and we have another big hitter here with Wika and Tomori. And again, this is a relationship that doesn't have all that many interactions, but the interactions they do have, episode 10 of MyGO, episode 13 of MyGO, and episode 9 of episode 9 of Mujica. They're super impactful, they're super memorable, and you have Tomori, who is just so unabashedly and earnestly herself, doesn't hide her feelings, doesn't hide the way she feels, will express them all in song in contrast to Wika, who her whole existence is hiding an identity, is masking, it's taking up, it's trying to be someone that isn't her, it's trying to become human. I mean, but that's the thing, is that they're both trying to become human, but they're both in such different ways, in such different places in their life, with such different levels of support and levels of appreciation. It's fascinating how they are paralleled, but obviously both being the lead singers of each band, they are, oh man, I really cannot express enough just how good Wika and Tomori are. They're like such an essence of the series. They're an essence of all the good things and the bad things that come with being human, that come with this series, this series trying to express it to you, that being your genuine self, being who you are, is the most important thing. And there are times that people may not accept you for that, but it's important to stay true to yourself. And I feel like Tomori and Wika, as parallels, as different representations of being human and becoming human, kind of represent that perfectly. And what's exciting is that season 3, we saw in the like little preview thingy, is that it's them two, they're the visual for it, and if we're getting focus on them two, I'm absolutely here for it. Like the thing is that Wika needs it as well, which is one thing, but I hope we do get interactions between them two, because the interactions they have had in the series have been incredibly good, and they've been very rare, and that's what's one of the best parts about their relationship, is that how short but impactful each interaction between them is. Obviously MyGO 10, it basically spurs on Tomori to bring MyGO back together, it spurs on Tomori to become human. And then MyGO 9, not MyGO 9, Mujica 9, it causes Wika to spiral even further, but it causes Wika to have realizations about herself, about the other people, about Saki and how she feels towards Tomori and Mujica and all of that. It like kickstarts both of them. It kickstarts their whole kind of being, their whole roles in the story of them becoming who they're supposed to be. And it's fascinating, it's amazing. And like I said, I think they're the best example of two characters that don't have too much going on interaction wise in the story, but there's so much there that parallels them, that puts them for me in my mind together. So when I think of Tomori, I think of Sakiko, I think of Anon, and I think of Wika. Funnily enough, I do not think of Soyo when I think of Tomori right away, which is interesting, but that's just how I feel. And when I think of Wika, I think of Sakiko, and I think of Tomori. But yeah, those two, amazing, awesome dynamic. Then we have Tomori and Umiri, which I guess there just isn't really, there's like nothing there, I think. I think there's potential though, so I'm going to put them there because they both have this very absolute, they don't hide themselves at all. They don't hide their intentions, they don't hide how they feel about other people. And I think there's a lot of potential between them. I'd love to see them interact somewhat, but Wika Mortis, again, non-existent. I don't know, I'm trying to think of any sort of, like obviously there's Wika kind of imitating Mortis, but that's just Wika, she'll imitate anything that she can to become human. I don't think there's anything there. Wika Mutsumi, again, there isn't really much I can think of right now, but I know there's a lot there in terms of their feelings towards Sakiko, in terms of their humanity, their wanting to be accepted. I think there's a lot of potential for those two, but more so that's already in the text, and I think a lot of it does boil down to their relationship with Sakiko and their differing kind of commitments and feelings of love towards Sakiko. But it would need me to think a lot harder than I am right now to really get into them, and kind of those are two characters I know if I did actually take some time to think about and take some time to kind of analyse, I would find probably lots of really interesting parallels and stuff like that. I mean, especially family-wise and how they've both been brought up or not brought up in some cases. But yeah, those two, they're interesting. Rinyamu, again, they have potential. There's not really anything going on there. I think there is a side of how Nyamu is very active in her, how she went, the way she wants things, compared to Rika's kind of passive sort of just goes along with things a bit. And their relationship to Sakiko, I think there's definitely potential between them. I'll put them a little bit higher actually, like around there. But again, it's stuff that will probably be explored in season 3, or stuff that there's just barely anything to really kind of comment on with those two in the text right now. And now we're on to a bit of a minefield of a ship, or a dynamic, which is Saki, and gotta be somewhat careful about how I speak about these two. To start with, I love their dynamic. I think it's one of the best in the series because of how terrible and toxic it is, and how it's another dynamic that I'd have to really. There's too much there for me to kind of just summarize in like 5 minutes in this kind of video, and this tier list. It is not really doing them justice at all. And I think, honestly, I don't care much about the romantic side of it, because obviously the whole incest thing, but also I don't think there's reciprocity there. I can't say words. I don't think Sakiko reciprocates it, and that's an important part of their relationship, I think. And it's very, for Sakiko, it's interesting how Wika, I think, definitely somewhat is a burden, but Sakiko's now taken on this position where she can't be a burden, you know? I'm really struggling to really explain what I like so much about them and what kind of makes them tick for me as a dynamic and as a relationship, because a lot of episode 12 just kind of does it for me, and it makes Rika's whole obsession with Sakiko so much more interesting. It makes Sakiko's acceptance of Rika is fascinating as well. Honestly, I'm disappointed in myself for not being able to really express how I feel about them properly, because, and I kind of expected that with ships like Soyo, Saki, and Saki, is that they're my favourites. They're my 3 favourites, and there's just so much going on in my head about them that I can't express it very eloquently at all. But just know they're amazing, and it's so much more than just like kind of edgy romantic incest shipping like that. It's frustrating to see people boil it down to just that. It's not about shipping, it's about them as characters. Look at their relationship beyond the romantic lens, and you'll find so much that's interesting about them. And that goes for pretty much all the relationships in the series as well. If you're restricting yourself to just looking at them through a romantic lens and looking at it through shipping and these headcanons, you're only going to get so far in how much you appreciate these characters. And I can't tell people how to consume media and to analyze characters. If they want to do that, then sure, go ahead, but you're limiting yourself to the potentials of these characters and their dynamics and their relationships and the enjoyment of them, and how much enjoyment you can get out of analysing them from an angle that's not romantic. And Saki is like the perfect example of that, because I can understand tapping out completely of their kind of relationship when in episode 11 when you find out they're related, especially given there are they lean into the romance with them too, but it's never ever been something in the series that's been glorified or romanticized or glamorized at all. It's frustrating to see people kind of just tune it out completely when there's so much there to look at from specifically that incestuous angle, because it's the reason that it's gone that way is because of the pressures that Wika's had to live with growing up, and not having these relationships, not having anything to attach yourself to, anything to even be close with, any sort of individual, any sort of anything apart from obviously the stars, which is like one of the only things that Wika has for herself alongside Sakiko. And yeah, it's a relationship that people are very opinionated on, one way or another. A lot of the haters are annoying, a lot of the lovers are annoying, but if you just kind of look at them from just be normal about them, you'll find so much that is interesting, so much to love about them as characters. And I think inherently most of the kind of problems people have with them just come from viewing them purely through a romantic lens, and it's like, oh no, there's just so much there to think about and love and talk about besides that. And for me, I can't get into it much right now because there's just so, like I said, there's a whole, I mean, any of these characters from S upwards I can just make a whole video on, but with like these in particular, there's just too much to even like process in my head right now to speak about and think about. But regardless, I love their relationship. I love how terrible and toxic it is. I love how dependent Wika is on Sakiko. I love how much Sakiko has accepted Wika despite everything, and the position that Sakiko's taken in the band and their relationship. And kind of, there's a fascinating angle from obviously the familial side and the Togawa group and the patriarchal kind of side of it. There's just there's genuinely so much I'm fucking short circuiting and frying my brain just trying to think about and trying to express it. But yeah, those two are awesome. I love them. Wika Umiri, I mean, it's alright. I don't think... The thing is with Wika is that, and very purposefully so, is that she doesn't have much of a relationship with any other characters, like apart from, I mean, when you look at Wika's interaction with other characters, she is at an all-time low. Obviously she has Saki, and I'm looking through this list. I have Wika and Soyo, no, Wika and Tomori, Wika and Soyo, Wika and Taki, Wika and Anon, Wika and Mutsumi, Wika Rana, Wika Mortis, and Wika Nyamu, and Wika just doesn't interact with these characters almost at all, apart from Wika and Sakiko, which is funny. But again, with those two, there's potential. There's potential with Wika and Umiri, especially in terms of their devotion to Sakiko, and both their general just kind of girl failure personalities they have, and they also have a very I'm actually just trying to think of any interaction they have right now. Like there was, I think we could found her in episode 13 of MyGo, and having Mujica. I can't. Maybe I'm just being stupid, but I can barely think of any interaction between them. Which just goes to show how isolated Rika is from the story, and how isolated she is from character interactions, obviously purposefully so, and it's very fascinating that is the case. And last but most certainly not least, we have Umiri Mortis and Umiri Mutsumi. I think these guys can be like high A. I think around, well, that actually isn't very high, but put them there. Because Umiri, interestingly enough, has completely good intentions when it came to Mortis and trying to keep her around for the band. I mean, we see her so passionately express it to Sakiko how it's just important that Mortis is alive. But the thing is, Umiri, it's hard to really pinpoint how she truly feels about Mortis and Mutsumi. Apologies, there's a flying object flying over my house, maybe a helicopter probably. Where was I? Yeah, Umiri and Mortis and Mutsumi are interesting because there's a lot of potential with them too, because Umiri was one of the few characters in the series to recognise Mortis as a person, along with Soyo and Rana, eventually Sakiko and Mutsumi. And Umiri showed just genuine kindness, and she built a relationship with Mortis beyond. She built a relationship with Mortis more so than anyone else except Soyo. But it's like, did she do that because she wanted the band back together? But regardless, it's the kind of thing that Soyo did all these things in MyGo with the intention of getting Kwaishu back together, but she still has that inherent kindness had that inherent kindness just to be, even though all these things she was doing in MyGo had ulterior motives, it didn't mean that kindness was fake at all. There was a side of it that was, but she was still just being Soyo. And on the other hand, you have Umiri, who had to learn how to express that kindness, as I mentioned with Taki in that scene in episode 10, that short scene. She had to learn how to express her feelings and express being able to appear as a good person to other people, and just not even just appear, just become a good person. So it's interesting with Mutsumi and Mortis, because I'd love to know from Mutsumi and Mortis' side how they feel about Umiri, because I'm sure Mortis has a very positive impression of Umiri. Mutsumi probably has a positive impression of Umiri as well, but not just on her kind of general dependability and her kind of just her being kind of a rock solid member of the band, like in a more logistical sense. But I think she'll have a lot of appreciation for Umiri helping Mortis out and fighting hard for Mortis to not just disappear, even though that would have been against Mutsumi's wishes at the time. She would feel grateful for Umiri for being there for Mortis. And I'd love to see more interactions between them as well, because I would like to see Mutsumi kind of express that, or Mortis express that, and Umiri to see how she kind of reacts to that. We might see a case where Umiri kind of makes a relationship that does feel very genuine, like she does have with Nyamu and Taki. And it'd be nice to see her that kind of grow and develop and flourish compared to like Umiri and Taki that's already been established. But yeah, that is everyone. Apart from Mana, sorry Mana, you're not involved. I'm just going through the list. I think Mujica's above Ano Tomo. Yeah, I'm very happy with this. I think. They can go in there, and I think no, they can stay there. Yeah, that's good. That's great. Thank you guys so much for watching. What I'm going to do now, I have no idea. I have videos I want to do and scripts I want to write, but I just haven't had the motivation recently. I've been moving as well, so things have just been busy. But I can't find myself having the motivation to sit down and kind of spill my thoughts a bit, apart from these kind of videos. Maybe a MyGO songs tier list would be nice to do. That would be fun. But I mean, I'll see what happens. I don't want to kind of plan or say I'm going to do certain things. But for now, this is the tier list. Just make sure you scroll down because my face is probably in the way. The bottom ones. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. See you guys later.